Today we've got a short lecture on the origin and purpose of local governments in Georgia. So let's just roll right into it. At the end of today, you need to be able to tell me what is the origin and purpose of city governments, county governments, and special purpose governments. Let's talk about terms though going into it. When I say origin, what I really am talking about is what creates these different types of governments, as well as why do we do these types of governments the way that we do them. And this is particularly relevant for county governments. When I say purpose of local government, so every government that you encounter, and you live under multiple tiers of governments, every government that you encounter should have a purpose to go with it. So those purposes are usually laid out. It's when you're talking the state and federal level and the preamble to the Constitution, like we talked about before spring break. But for counties and cities and special purpose governments, those are in their charters, the different county charters. They state the purpose of it, okay? So that's what I mean when I say purpose. Why does this government exist? What does it provide to? All right, let's jump right in. First up, county government. All right, let's talk about the origins first, and then we'll get into the purposes for county government. The text here on the slide says, counties were created by a rural society that expected government to keep the record straight and provide swift justice. So basically just to be a small, efficient way of handling business. Georgia, it goes on, it says, due to the historically rural economy of Georgia resulting in few major cities, this county-based government system of Georgia has been the mainstay of the state. As such, Georgia has the second most counties, 159 in the U.S. Now, basically what that means is that Georgia has historically, until about the 1950s, 1960s, been a majority rural state. All right, and so we just haven't had huge cities develop like that has happened in the north. As a result, counties became our basic unit for administering local government instead of cities. Cities are, in other states, the main mechanism by which the services of local government are provided, but not in Georgia because of our historically rural nature. The overall idea behind the reason that we have so many counties is that our counties are kind of small, right? The reason that they're small is pretty straightforward. The idea was, especially early on, before the car and before before larger towns and cities began to develop, was that a farmer should be able to ride into the seat of his local government in his county, wherever that may be, on the back of his donkey, do his business in town, and then ride all the way back out on the back of his donkey to the farm. And he should be able to do that in 1 day's time. Okay. Now, I don't know if you know anything about riding a donkey, but it's not very fast. All right. And so that meant that wherever the seat of government for local government was for this person, it had to be kind of close. All right. So what we ended up doing was creating 159 counties across the state, most of whom are pretty small. And that was to make government closer to the people. That's ultimately the goal here, is to keep your local government local. Keep it close to the people that it serves. Okay. Counties, to create them, modify them, change them, whatever, that requires a constitutional amendment. So when we talk about our different levels of laws and stuff, rules the government creates that you have to follow, constitutional amendment is the highest form of law that we have as a state government. It is more important than just regular laws or passed by the General Assembly. So it actually takes quite a bit to either create or change or modify a county government in Georgia. All right, let's look at maybe why that is. Why is the county, what are the county governments doing that is so essential? And so, at minimum, every single county needs to have a sheriff, a tax commissioner, a clerk of the Superior Court, and a judge and a judge. Basically, law enforcement, a way to collect money, and a way to keep the record straight. At a minimum, the county needs those officials elected to do those jobs. All right. Georgia's counties serve several functions, including providing courts of law, holding elections, building and repairing county roads, and administering welfare programs. Now, what we lump all of those in under the category of services. This is a term that you have already encountered in your readings, but anything a county does or government does for its people is a service. So trash collection is a service that counties provide for their people. It used to be that this was all the county government could do, but in 1983 we changed our constitution, wrote a whole new one, and it opened the door for counties to provide police and fire protection, libraries, and public transportation. Okay, so kind of opened up the potential purposes or services that a county government could provide for the people. Now, none of this is free. Okay, all these services that the county is providing cost money, and those are funded through 4 primary ways: sales taxes, property taxes, splosts, which we'll talk about, and fees. Sales tax is just a tax on the final sale of all goods and services. Property taxes, that's a tax on your property. So every year I own a house, I pay taxes on it. It goes to local government. It goes mainly to the county government and also the local school system. And then splosts. That is a term you need to remember. It will show up on the test. You need to understand what they are and what they do. SPLOST stands for Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax. All right, so what it is in the name. All right, it is a tax that was created for a special purpose. So let's say, for example, that Gwinnett wants to widen Ozora Road, which is out in front of the school. But they don't have the money in their normal operating budget to pay for such a large project. So what they could do is they could put it to the people. They could create what's called a referendum, a vote by the people. And they could say to them, hey, let's raise the sales tax by half a penny to pay for this one project. And once the project is done, the tax, it goes away. All right? So these are special taxes for special purposes that do not last forever. Currently, real world, our school district has an extra half-cent sales tax in place to help pay for the construction of new schools in our county. Okay? But once those schools are constructed and all the stuff is paid for, that tax will go away, and they'll likely try to do it again to continually expand schools because we're growing so quickly. All right, that covers origin and purpose for county governments. Again, it's the basic unit of government in Georgia. They are created by constitutional amendments. They provide essential services to people, and they are funded primarily through sales tax, property tax, splosts, and fees. Okay. All right, let's talk about city governments now. City governments, you could kind of say they're underneath counties. Like every resident in Georgia, every person in Georgia lives in a county, but not every resident in Georgia lives in a city. Like, for example, where I live just outside of the city of Beaufort. And so technically, I just live in Gwinnett County. I don't live in a city, all right? Now, cities are established through something called a municipal charter. So you also hear cities or towns referred to as municipalities, okay? But for the purposes of this, city and town is really what I'm going to be saying here. And a charter is simply a written document that sets up the governmental structure, including the type of government, boundaries, and powers it will have. So basically, it's a statement about why this government exists, which we'll talk about in just a second. In total, there's 500 cities or over 500 cities or towns in Georgia, but again, not everybody lives in one. Okay. Unlike other states, Georgia makes no legal distinction between a city, town, or village. This is because cities and towns are approved and incorporated by the General Assembly. So in plain English, basically, the only other type of government that can exist underneath a county is a city government. Okay. Other states, there are differences between what is considered to be a city, a town, or a village. And Pennsylvania comes to mind for that. But not in Georgia. There's just counties, cities. And in order to create, modify, change a city or the municipal charter specifically, all it takes is a simple vote by the General Assembly. So the way that any other law that would be passed by the General Assembly, that's the same way that in Georgia we create and modify, or even destroy, or not destroy, but do away with cities. Okay. Um, yeah. Now we'll move on to purpose. So why would we want an extra layer of government between the county and the people? Okay. Because every single government that is created is not free. It costs money. So why would people want to pay more money for more government? Well, city governments provide not just basic services that counties would also provide, but they provide extra service. They may provide more police and fire protection, different, more higher funded schools, more public libraries, more awesome public parks, water services. Basically, cities are created by citizens who just want a little more from their more services, higher quality services from their government. But the trade-off that they're making is that they're going to have to pay more in taxes, because even if you live in a city, you still pay county taxes, all right? But when you go and do things inside the city, you're now also paying county and city taxes. So let's talk about funding for cities. Cities are mostly funded through the same ways that counties are: sales taxes, property taxes, SPLOS, and fees. So again, sales taxes, those are the final taxes on, or the tax on all the final sale of goods and services in Georgia. So what will essentially happen is Georgia, as a state, I believe, and I may be wrong, has a 4% sales tax, and then county governments have anywhere from 2 to 4% additional sales tax on top of that. So now we're talking 8% roughly, and then a city may have 1 to 2 extra percent sales tax. So if you live in a city in Georgia, your sales tax is going to be higher than if you didn't. All right, or if you go shopping in a business that is located in a city, the sales tax you will pay there will be higher than it will be in other parts of the state that is not part of a city. All right, property taxes. Again, if I lived in the city of Beaufort instead of just outside of it, I would pay property taxes to Gwinnett County. I would pay property taxes to Gwinnett County Public Schools, but I would also pay property taxes to the city of Beaufort. Okay, so there's an extra element there. SPLOST, the same thing. Special purpose local option sales taxes. These are temporary sales taxes that are put in place for a specific purpose. And then finally, fees. If you want to get a business license, you're going to pay a small fee from the local government in order to. All right, special purpose government. This is the last form of government we'll talk about. Their origins, it was very similar to cities. However, they are not really cities. They are created to serve a specific function for the state or local community. For example, one of the ones that we will talk about is MARTA. MARTA is in many different local government areas. So it's in DeKalb County, Fulton County. I believe it's also now moved into Henry County, but I may be wrong about that. It also crosses into the city of Decatur and the city of Atlanta. So there's a lot of different governments that need to all be on the same page in order for MARTA to be created and function. That's actually pretty hard to do. And so a special purpose government was created to manage MARTA specifically. These governments are usually headed by a governing board of non-elected officials. So like you don't get to vote for who heads up MARTA. It's just somebody who is either selected by whatever mechanism is put in place by the charter that creates the special purpose government. Those charters are created the same way any other law would be in the General Assembly. It's just a simple, the lawmaking process like we talked about previously. That's all that's required in order to create or even do away with or modify a special purpose government. Again, that is different than counties. Counties require a constitutional amendment, which is way higher of a threshold. All right, so let's get at the purpose behind special purpose governments. All right, so generally speaking, they're to manage some sort of problem that crosses through the boundaries of several different local governments, like we already talked about with MARTA. Other types include the Georgia Ports Authority, local school systems like Athens-Clarke County school system, where the city of Athens and Athens County and Clarke County are located. They kind of merge together in certain ways, and so their school systems at least, and so that's the way those are funded. Local housing authorities, Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport is actually run in a way by the government. So yeah, how are these special purpose governments funded? Through sales taxes, property taxes, SPLOST and fees, same way as all the other forms of local government in Georgia. All right, so at this point in the year, we have talked about a lot of different layers of government, okay? We started the year way back in the first semester when we talked about the founding of the United States after the Revolutionary War with the creation of the federal government. Then we got into some state government stuff that we spent a lot of time there. Today, we've talked about local governments and the different types that exist. So counties, cities, and special purpose, how those may interact. The assignment for today is wide open. I just want you to draw a picture or diagram that depicts the relationship between the federal government, the state of Georgia, and local governments in regard to their relative power and purpose. So you're going to be like, well, how do I draw in this? Well, up here, you've got all sorts of tools that you can use, shapes, arrows, callouts. You can even go directly into, if you're on a computer, you can draw where is it? You could even take a picture of something that you draw on paper in your own house and just paste it in here and submit that, okay? Let's make sure that you get this done before the end of the day today. And please let me know if you have any questions or issues. All right, it was great talking to you guys. I hope you understood this. If you didn't, please let me know. We're going to go back over some of this stuff next week. Tomorrow is a maintenance day, so if you're behind, please get caught up. All right, y'all. Have a great day.